I'm going to call the Springfield City Council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Weber, Counselor Moe,
Here.
Counselor Rodley,
Here.
Counselor Blackwell,
Here.
and Counselor Stout.
Here, thank you. And please note for the record that Counselor Weber is excused for the evening. We have one work session item. It's the Springfield Municipal Code updates with public contracts with Jessica Mummy. Come on down.
Yeah, that sounds exciting.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jessica Mummy. I am the city's budget and procurement manager. I'm very happy to be here with you this evening to discuss updates to the Springfield Municipal Code, specifically the public contracts section of the code. Really briefly, before I start going through the slide deck, I wanted to just provide some really high-level background information. This evening, I'm here to request your guidance on suggested changes to the Springfield Municipal Code as presented. Procurement at the City of Springfield is subject to the state of Oregon laws and regulations. The Springfield Municipal Code for public contracts is outdated, which is creating an inefficient process for council staff and our vendor community. The suggested changes to the Springfield Municipal Code will have no impact to budgets, but will change processes with the intent to improve efficiency. So why are we here today and what are we trying to solve? The city's code on public contracts was enacted in 2005 and it was last updated in 2015. The purpose of this section of the code is to adopt rules for the city as it applies to public contracting, including the processes that must be followed by the city when procuring goods and services, including construction services, in contracts of varying amounts. It also lays the framework for signature authority. That includes the monetary threshold of contracts that must be reviewed and approved by City Council. The proposed changes address updates to state law, specifically Senate Bill 1047 that was approved in the 2023 regular session. And we're updating the code to adjust practices surrounding public contracting to improve efficiencies for council staff and the vendor community. And finally, most Oregon cities and counties have already updated their public contracting code to incorporate these changes to state law. Specifically, Lane County and the City of Bend very recently completed this process. The proposed changes to the code before council are consistent with the actions that have been taken by other jurisdictions. So if council decides to update the revised Springfield Municipal Code, some deliverables to be created would be the revised municipal code, but also several revised internal documents. Those internal policy documents and revisions would include review and engagement with the city attorney's office, finance, and human resources as applicable to ensure they're consistent with Oregon state and federal law. Some pros to this process would be increased signature authority for the city manager, which would mean less contracts have to come before City Council for review and approval. Vendors would have a more streamlined experience doing business with the city, and again, improved efficiencies for staff and council. So the proposed timeline for this process is as follows. This evening, September 15th, we have the council work session. I'll be back before you on October 6th for a city council public hearing and first reading. At that time, I'll also incorporate any changes or suggested edits you have. And then finally, October 20th would be before city council on the consent calendar for a second reading. And if that goes through all the processes, then in winter and spring, I would be implementing the revised procurement code. So this evening, I'll have several questions that I'll be seeking guidance on from council. The first one is arguably the biggest, which is increasing the threshold for small, intermediate, and large procurements for goods and services. And then also, what should those limits be if for amendments if it is increased? The environment today, and this is for goods and services, is city staff can do a small procurement up to $9,999.99. Staff can procure these types of goods and services through direct appointment or informal quotes. Our intermediate thresholds is 10,000 to just under 100,000. That's with formal quotes, and that's obtaining 3 formal quotes. And finally, our large procurements have to go through a formal RFP or RFQ process. Last year, we had approximately 6 of those, so not a lot. The proposed future, and again, this follows the revised state law, there's no deviation, is for small procurements to be $25,000 or less. And again, that's direct appointment or informal quote. Our intermediate procurement for goods and services would be $25,000 to $250,000. And our large procurement threshold would be $250,000 or more that would have to go through the RFP and RFQ process. And again, these revised thresholds you're seeing on the screen now are consistent with state law and what similar and other jurisdictions in Oregon have enacted.
All right, so go ahead, Counselor Wadley.
Are we stopping after each one or is that all of them?
No, there's probably 4 questions in here, so I was planning on stopping in each one, so we didn't have to return it to complete our homework.
So I do have just sort of comments around it. I'm comfortable with the increasing the amounts of the small, immediate, and large. The one that, and I don't, it sounds like it's not changing, but I do have some questions about the small procurement and the fact that it's kind of an informal quote process. I think I would, if I was the boss of the world, which I'm not, want to have like still some more stringent, like how we're getting that information out there. And what the sort of the quote process is, because the other ones we're probably have to get like 3 or 2 or whatever. And I'll tell you the why that I'm thinking about it is because these smaller procurements could possibly be ones that, you know, smaller emerging businesses or minority-owned businesses, whatever, could apply for. And to be able to have a process by which we're sort of spreading that around as opposed to like, oh, I always work with such and such print shop, or I always work with this person who's the brother of so-and-so. So just having a more detailed process that we're actually reaching out and we're getting it to the best and we're helping our small businesses learn how to apply for these. I mean, that's the thing, but I am one voice and I'm not the boss of it, but I think we should have a little bit more parameters for the small procurement process as opposed to just anybody, but I'm fine with the amounts.
Okay, anybody else? Counselor Blackwell.
I too am fine with the amounts. When you mentioned that it would be more streamlined for the vendors, is that because we'd be more in line with what other, like the county is doing and it would match kind of what, okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
Counselor Stout.
I have like 2 questions if that's okay. Okay, so approximately how many of procurements are we doing in the small and the middle range quotes? So you said about 6 of the large ones, and those have to have 3 quotes no matter what, or how do we bypass that? And I just kind of want numbers on those. Can you detail that for me?
Sure. So for our small procurements, these are under 100, and that's just based on contract numbers that we're generating.
Okay.
Our intermediate procurements would fall into that less than 100. We really don't generate that many contracts at the city of Springfield. And for the large procurements, those are the ones that require the formal process, the request for quotes or request for qualifications or request for bids.
Okay.
And those ones are sealed bids, advertised, etc.
Okay. And then when we're talking about the small procurements, are we required to get multiple bids on those or just call a handful of folks?
For small procurements, it can be direct appoint. So city staff can just choose somebody, or they can do an informal quote process. Procurement is decentralized at Springfield. So some departments do strictly follow the informal quote process, while others pick up the phone and say, hey, can you do this? How much is it? And then they get a contract.
Got it. So I might be of a slightly different mind than my colleagues on council. It's just that the jump in sheer contract value is substantial, and it's quite a bit. And I'm not implying that staff is doing anything, but I think they're doing an exceptional job. I really want to highlight that. At the same time, I think I have a a background concern that if we do raise these amounts quite this far, it might be an additional, we might not be as stringent about what we're doing, knowing that we need a little extra layer of oversight on these different things. So I think I'm interested in making sure whatever we're doing in terms of procurement, that we have a little extra oversight. We're not just using the same vendor over and over again, similar to what Councilor Rodley said. And also, yeah, just overall, the jump seems a little bit steep for me. But again, I'm one voice on the council, so thank you.
All right. Anybody else? So I think we're good with the amounts. I think it's just a little bit of feedback about the how do we manage from the change of today, right, to the higher brackets for tomorrow.
Certainly, absolutely. Okay, policy question number 2 before council is, does council wish to increase the city manager's authority to sign contracts and make purchases? And if so, should that limit match the amounts required for the sealed bid and proposals, which is the over $250,000 mark? What that would mean is the city manager could sign contracts from 1 penny to up to $250,000. It's currently $100,000. And I'll provide some more background on that. So currently, for calendar year 25, contracts that fit between that $100,000 and $250,000 range that would no longer come to council if this was approved, there were 16 contracts. Some examples of those contracts were the actuarial services for the city retirement plan with Milliman, our independent auditor contract for our annual financial audit, insurance services contracts for our benefits broker with USI, our insurance brokerage services with Brown and Brown, and police patrol vehicle purchases, animal shelter contract with Green Hill, and Cahoots services contract. The city manager's authority to sign contracts in 2005 was $35,000. In 2012, it was $100,000, and it has stayed consistent at $100,000 since 2012. Some similar jurisdictions, currently Hillsborough has a $500,000 limit. Albany has a $250,000 limit, as does Medford. And then counties, Washington County is $300,000 and Lane County is $200,000 for their city administrators. Finally, state law does not dictate. This would be a council decision. And council currently does receive disbursements for approval. You'll see that in your packet this evening. So it's not that you would no longer see those expenditures. You would just see them in a different way.
All right, questions? I guess the one clarification we also that is also worth pointing out is the city manager has to have budget authority to do this.
Correct. Any expenditures for the city of Springfield have to have existing budget authority.
So I think we're fine with the 250K.
All right, jump into number 3. This is the question surrounding, should the city increase the threshold for small procurements of public improvement contracts? Now, public improvement contracts is defined as a project for construction, reconstruction, or major renovation of real property. The current versus the proposed practice is on the screen. Small procurements today is up to $5,000. The future proposed is $25,000 or less. And then for our large procurements, which would be that formal process, there is no change. Some of the pros regarding this would be, again, staff could just contract directly with a vendor for contracts up to $25,000 without obtaining quotes. It would provide increased efficiency and flexibility in improving those contracts. We could get them executed quicker. And then this would align and be consistent with state law and what other jurisdictions are currently doing.
Councilor Rodley.
I think I'm fine again with the amounts. The idea of like contracting with a vendor without having any kind of vetting process or obtaining quotes or showing the why. I just think that, I mean, and I understand the efficiencies, so maybe it doesn't have to be a bunch, but I just feel like we should have some sort of a process that's so that if somebody comes back and is like, why are we doing business with so and so, we can, defend the process. And just a person got to choose a vendor. I don't know. I just am not entirely comfortable with that.
So Stone.
I'm almost wondering if, and I really do respect Councilor Wildley's position. I'm almost wondering if a certain amount of reporting might be more useful in this case, where at the end of the year, maybe we take a look at, hey, here's some vendors that were doing, 10 jobs for under 25,000 each, and so we ended up doing a whole lot of business with this particular person. And if that turned out to be, Mayor Van Gordon's brother-in-law, we could have a conversation about it. But if it was not, then okay, everything looks above board, and we can also see the way that we're investing in Springfield businesses at the end of the year. So that's all.
So Blackwell.
I have a little bit of concern too, just with fiscal responsibility, just being in real estate, it's always get 3 bids, get 3 quotes, so that part of just having kind of a free range of, go pick who you like or who you've used before. I'm not sure that that's the best idea, honestly.
All right. So maybe this is a question for when we come back, is to just chat about what the internal practices are around this question of like, are we really agreeing up to $25,000? Somebody can just essentially call whoever they want. I think it's probably a little bit more complex than that, but maybe if we can get a little bit more information about that piece, it would be helpful.
The information that is currently available would be simply the information that you receive in your council packets regarding disbursements. It lists the vendor, the amount, contract, if there is a contract, and what the money was being expended for.
So I guess internally, when you talk about the small disbursements, which is kind of where I'm hearing people's anxiety, is is it is it a director that's got to sign off on that, or is it, or can any staff sign off on that?
So that would depend on each staff member's signature authority or ability to sign contracts. Nancy's is up to $100,000. Most directors are up to $50,000, and very few staff have contract signing authority over $5,000.
So is anything in what you're presenting today leading us down the road where we would change, where the city manager is going to change the signing authority that exists for internal staff?
Under policy question 2 that we just looked at, I'm just going to go back so it's on the screen. If council decided to increase the city manager signature authority to, for example, $250,000, the city manager would then have the discretion to adjust directors, etc., signature authority. So it could be increased. That would be under the city manager's purview per the code.
So my take, and if people want to talk about it, we should talk about it more, is I think I'm good here, right? Because we're, as we're making that sort of policy decision, we're letting kind of Nancy make some of the implementation decisions, and then she'll catch everybody else up from there. Councilor Wildley.
Thank you. I'm not ungood. I think we should have more conversation at a future date about just what our policies are around who we're contracting with, right? And understanding that connection with the budget, I think, is really important. And sometimes things which we have seen recently, sometimes things which seem like very ordinary purchases, we're not tracking that closely because it's not really our business, and yet it then comes back as a policy piece. So I just have some concerns around that, and so I'd like to have a future conversation about, well, what are our parameters around who we want to do business with. And I absolutely understand wanting to eliminate barriers and wanting to make things more efficient. because eventually that costs us less. And I just feel I just still don't feel entirely comfortable with it.
Okay, so can we get maybe to the point that we're giving direction to prepare the documents and then, when we come back in a regular session, can we get a little bit more information about that and give us a chance to just ask some more questions? Would probably be the
Yeah,
best way.
absolutely.
That way we can both be good and not ungood at the same time. Yeah.
Semi.
We can do that. Not a problem at all. All right. Halfway point. Question number 4. Does council wish to adopt an updated definition of personal services in place of the former list of specific types of consultants and officer positions? So this one, examples of, first of all, I kind of want to set the stage on what the difference between personal services and professional services are. That seems to be one area that people get a little bit tied up on. Current personal service examples in our municipal code are computer programmer, communication consultant, marketing consultant, accountant, lawyer, very specific titles. A professional service would be architectural, engineering, land surveying, and transportation planning. So personal versus professional. This is normal in Oregon State procurement law. I just wanted to let you guys know the differences. The question before you today is simply around personal services, because we're not planning on changing the definition of professional services. Some examples of contracts of personal services would be our contract for municipal court indigent defense services, our contract in the city attorney's office for our city prosecutor, our contract in HR with Brown & Brown for insurance brokerage services, and our contract in finance with our external auditors for our annual financial audit. What this would look like in practice using the new definition that's in the code is it would focus on characteristics of the service and not specific titles. So for example, it would say services that require specialized skill, knowledge, and resources in the application of technical or scientific expertise or professional, artistic, or management discretion of judgment, including but not limited to the following. And then there's several criteria that would meet that. And the definition that we're using in the proposed code before you is revised based on the League of Oregon Cities model policy. So we're trying to align with what the League of Oregon Cities model policy looks like.
I'm not seeing people raise their hands, so I think that we are good on this one.
Sounds great. All right, we're almost done. Policy question number 5. Does council wish to delegate the city manager the ability to decide what specific contracts are personal service contracts or reserve that authority to council only? So what would happen if council delegated to the city manager? It would allow the city manager to handle the day-to-day administrative tasks, It would allow the city manager discretion to determine if a contract is personal services, if it doesn't fall into the specific definition that's in code. However, the decision must meet the specific requirements that are in the revised code. So if you look at the revised code, it says the city manager may classify a service as a personal service contract if it meets all of the following. And it lists 3 specific parameters that would have to be followed. If council retained the authority, it could just slow down the process of getting them in your council packet and having you decide if they're a personal services contract, and it could bog down with contract classification questions. Some other options for you to consider, though, would be to delegate to the city manager, but provide some guardrails, such as if the contract is this amount or less, the city manager can decide. If it's this amount or more, it has to come before council.
All right, questions or some head nods? Counselor Stout.
Just one thing is what happens if the city manager misclassifies a contract? Is there any consequence to that, or is it just how we're tracking it internally?
Mary Bridget, can I?
I suppose you could potentially have some kind of liability if a contract was misclassified and should have gone through a formal request for proposal process instead of some kind of direct appoint or lesser amount. There might be some liability there from other vendors who say, hey, you should have opened this up and had a more fair process, potentially.
All right, anybody else? Go ahead.
And then about how many of these contracts we probably going to look at throughout the year?
I feel confident in saying it would probably be, if city council retained authority, be less than 5.
Yeah, I think we're comfortable.
Okay. All right, question 6 of 7. If council authorizes emergency procurement in response to a declared state of emergency, should further reporting to council be required? So today, how this looks like is there are 2 distinct types of emergency procurement. One are standalone emergencies, and the other are those procurements made under an ongoing declared state of emergency. Currently, for both of those types, council is updated within 30 days of either of those emergency procurements occurring. What the suggested change is the proposed code removes the 30-day council update only for procurements that are made during a declared state of emergency. And then just kind of in practice, how this has looked in the past, for the January 2024 ice storm, notification to council were later than the 30 days as priority was given on overseeing the contract work rather than reporting to council. However, staff have and will ensure council is updated about all aspects of an emergency through other methods.
All right. Councilor Rodley?
I guess I'm curious if we don't have any sort of time parameters, how do we how do we make sure that we get the reporting? Because I know that we don't always track, and sometimes, so if we don't have any parameters around it, then what?
That was my question too, is if it's not 30 and it's whenever, I don't know, I feel like it's too broad.
Yeah.
All right. So I think our feedback is we still want some sort of parameter, but given the case of the last few emergencies that we've had, maybe I don't know what a good number would be. I think I would defer to staff to find. Go ahead.
Can I ask a clarifying question? If there's not a time parameter, but staff's required to keep the council informed like they do in the instance where there is a declared emergency, and we're providing those kind of regular updates about many aspects of the emergency in addition to procurement, in terms of if the emergency is still happening, if there's special emergency procurement, if the services are restored and those kinds of things, would that be sufficient? Because what we're doing now is we're doing an update on procurement, on emergency procurement when we have a declared emergency. So sometimes we're either repeating information or getting to it too late. So I'm wondering if we do it in the context of a declared emergency, the regular updates that council would get in that situation, if that would be sufficient. And we could probably put into the code, staff would update in instances of a declared emergency, staff would provide an update to the council or something. So we know we'd have to do it. We just have to do it in 30 days.
I think we're just looking for some sort of action verb that kind of gets us the regular information, right? So because as we come out of an emergency, we all want to wrap our kind of head around what just happened, what do we need to learn from it? And then also, how do we explain it to the community? So I would be fine if we had language that was, hey, the staff should provide ongoing updates from a procurement perspective. Right. Because that to me just seems like regular.
Right. So that would be for a declared emergency, like let's say another ice storm. We wouldn't have to do the 30-day notification and update on emergency procurements because we'd already be updating you on different aspects of that storm. But if we had a standalone emergency procurement, like a building that was unsafe and we had to take some action to kind of take that building down, then we would, outside of a declared emergency, then we would provide you with within 30 days, the update of why we did that emergency procurement.
Yes.
Is that getting there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Great.
All right.
Okay, last one. Final. Should the city prohibit employees from competing with the public for the sale of surplus items? And should the city require a bill of sale be issued to all purchasers of surplus property? So employees are prohibited from using information known only to them because of their public official status to obtain any financial advantage under Oregon government ethics law. This is current practice. The proposed change in the code is taken from the League of Oregon Cities Model Code, and it's consistent with other jurisdictions. Current code allows employees to compete for these surplus items. The proposed code would prevent city employees from competing. And the current code has no bill of sale requirement. The proposed code would require a bill of sale. So it's two separate actions that are taking place. So some pros of prohibiting employees and some pros of having a bill of sale would be it would avoid conflict of interests, reduce abuse and risk. It'd be easier to administer, and it would be a uniform procedure and audit trail specific for the bill of sale. Some cons of prohibiting employees and not having a bill of sale would be it could limit legitimate buyers. It may seem as overly restrictive, and it may seem as a minor administrative burden or feel excessive for the bill of sale.
Councilor Blackwell.
I was actually surprised to see that they weren't prohibited at this point, to be honest. That was kind of shocking to me. So I'd fully support that. I think it is a conflict of interest. And as far as a bill of sale goes, that seems just like it should happen. That just seems like common sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thumb up. Or you have a question, Councilor Stout?
Just yes on the bill of sale, please. Thank you.
All right. Yes, it seems like the answer that we've ended up with.
Fantastic. That's all I have for this topic.
We did it. All right. I'm going to adjourn the work session, and then we will be back for the regular session here in a minute. I'm going to call the regular session of the Springfield City Council to order with a roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Weber, Counselor Moe. Here. Counselor Rodley,
Here.
Counselor Blackwell,
Here.
and Counselor Stout.
Here, thank you.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two times designated for public testimony this evening under public hearings and business from the audience. If you are attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located in the front of the council chambers and turn it into the city recorder. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, computer, and wish to speak at those times, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone in person in the council chambers, and then anyone who has raised their virtual hand. First item, please.
Mayor, the first item is the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber, Counselor Moe,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell,
Yes.
and Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 4 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearings. You have one public hearing tonight. That is surplus land. Designate city-owned land as surplus in the Linda Lane area. Jeremy Shear is here for this item.
The aerial, the GIS aerial map of Linda Lane. I'm sorry, I just now thought of that.
Hang on.
Might be helpful.
1 second. We are trying to, Nancy, do you have your hand raised?
No, I do not.
Oh, it is the cursor. We've solved the mystery.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Jeremy.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Jeremy. I am your city surveyor, and I'm before you today to seek council approval to designate land that we refer to as Linda Lane. It's 2 tax lots, about 34 acres in size, as surplus land. Then holding a portion of it, about 11 acres, that the city will hold on to for wetland compensatory wetlands, so site. So this property is just south of Mount Vernon. It's along Linda Lane, and it was purchased for the Jasper Trunk project for, as I mentioned, the compensatory, can't say that word, wetland site in order to get a fill remove permit through the Army Corps of Engineers. So that area is about 11 and a half acres, more or less. And it was, the entire property was acquired about 4 years ago in 2021. Since then, there is a restrictive covenant on the wetland area, on the 11.6 acres, and we are obligated to maintain that in perpetuity. So as of now, the purpose of that land has been achieved, and there's no other city interest that I can think of for holding on to it. So, so we are suggesting and requesting that the council consider surplus that land. It was when it was purchased for $450,000. It was recently appraised for $830,000, excluding the 11 and a half acres of wetland. So the next step, if it were to be designated as surplus land, we would put it on the open market and receive offers and bids and take the best of the offers. And once it's sold, we will covenant with the purchaser to not buy back, but to take control over that 11 and a half acres of wetlands. I think that's all I have on that report. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Are there any questions? Councilor Stout.
Is it properly zoned for the highest and best use for sale?
According to the appraiser, it is.
All right, I think we're ready for the to do the public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing. I've got a couple cards. I will call each one of you, and please come up. And then you'll have 3 minutes and state your name for the record and location for the record. Renee Ellis.
My name is Renee Ellis. I live at 1940 South 58th Street. The sale of Linda Lane property is, I believe, a mistake. And the reason I believe that is because it was bought, as he said, for wetland mitigation, and it has been certified as high-value wetland by a 2022 plan by an outside firm. That plan states that the mitigation value that they established to allow that to be used to offset your sewer trunk, is based on current values, not values if it's developed around it. The plan states that the mitigation is protection of the current functions and values of the wetlands, which does not include surrounding it with development. You cannot claim to protect it by putting a chain link fence around it and allowing the upslope to be graded, trenched, and covered with cement and asphalt. These are high-value wetlands because of the entirety of the land around them. They do not exist independent from what is around them. The upslope property drainage is what recharges and refreshes those wetlands and allows them to function as high quality. And no amount of rain gardens and the diversion of gutter water and runoff into those lands can mitigate the damage of cutting off that fresh flow from above and below ground. The capacity of this wetland to filter out contamination is not without limits, and the drainage it filters is what ends up in the Willamette River and the sub-well water system that provides our drinking water. The cost of mitigation credits at a wetland bank can be $100,000 and up per single credit if you can find them at all. The smart thing would be to keep that land, increase the existing Wesser wetlands, as well as a mitigated 11 acres, and have them for future mitigation needs when they arise. I bring a visual aid. This is a beaver chew that I found on that property the other day. There's a beaver dam out there. Beavers increase wetland area and they improve wetland area, and they provide fire suppression, which in that area is very vital because all of our homes are at risk if a fire starts there. The beauty of beavers is that they work for free. And I went over there the other day and there was more, before the rains, and there was more water over there than I've ever seen before, and I've been in that house for 9 years, than I've ever seen before, especially after a dry summer, because the beaver has built a dam. You cannot fence that off and have construction around it and have the beavers. That doesn't work that way. Keeping that land is in your best interest for future needs. Should you have another program that falls into, we need to mitigate wetland loss, you would have it there. And you don't even have to pay to increase the wetland size. You can just let the beavers do it. But putting construction around that is not in line with what that wetland mitigation plan says. And unless you've read all 85 pages of that, which I have, unless you understand how wetlands work and how drainage works and why we have them and why they're important, you're not making an informed decision. I have to also point out that we in the Fifth Ward are not represented here in this decision at all. And I think it's unfair that we're limited to just 3 minutes to tell you why we think it's a mistake.
Okay, thank you. Robert Moore.
My name is James Robert Moore. I live at 5753 Orchid Lane in Jasper Meadows, 3rd subdivision. I think it would be a mistake to use Linda Lane for another housing project. My major concern at this point is how Linda Lane would be access to a major highway. From Linda Lane to Mount Vernon Road, or through our neighborhood, going down Mineral Way, which is a very crowded neighborhood. Jasper Meadows' 3rd subdivision has 147 homes, with only one entrance and exit for all traffic onto Mount Vernon Road. Lennar is now constructing 35 additional homes south of our subdivision. These additional homes would utilize the same exit, making close to 200 homes dependent on one exit. We have been told that an additional exit would be built east end of Orchid Lane, but now we are told there's to be a house built there instead. This lot is the only possible remaining place for another exit to be built from our subdivision. Late last night, Sunday, we drove through our entire subdivision to count the number of cars, trucks, service trucks, trailers, as well as RVs and boats, which are temporarily parked there. We counted 227 vehicles parked in driveways and on the streets, and that's not counting cars, motorcycles, and bicycles, which may be in garages. According to my understanding, this would be in violation of the city's own restrictions on the amount of traffic allowed for such a great number of homes, with only one way in and out. When Lennar began construction south of us, we were told that another road would be built off Bobstraub, south of Mount Vernon Road, but to be used only for purposes of construction vehicles, and this exit would not be a permanent one for the use of the residences. This would mean that all traffic in the Lennar project would, of necessity, exit north onto 57th Street, then onto Mineral Way, leading to Mount Vernon Road, unless another road is built out of Linda Lane and by some method going west. In the event of a fire, earthquake, or other catastrophe, dozens and dozens of vehicles would be trying to exit at the same time that emergency vehicles would be trying to enter. As a resident who lives at the very south end of the subdivision, you may well understand the threat which this represents to me and my neighbors. It doesn't require much to imagine the chaos which would ensue. But who would be responsible if this happens? If Linda Lane is approved for additional housing, the problem of adding additional traffic to our one and only exit and entrance Linda Lane is riddled with wetlands and a poor choice, in my opinion, for additional housing. It would even add more stress to the traffic problem which already exists, and it's a dire one if anything bad happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No more.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councils and everyone. My name is Vera Moore, and my husband and I live at 5753 Orchid Lane, as he explained. We moved there nearly 4 years ago at a time just after the Holiday Farm fire, and there was much discussion about what to do with the possibility of a fire and emergency preparedness. And we have appreciated input from the city and the council about how to prepare. We have our to-go bags packed and ready, and even one for the cat. We've had many discussions with neighbors and friends and families about possible emergency scenarios and how to handle them. Several aspects have arisen, one of which is the purpose of my testimony tonight, and it's really adding on what my husband said, and that is our home is at the south end of Jasper Meadows. The only way in and out is at the north end, and we feel very vulnerable, as do our neighbors. Despite a city regulation that there must be no more than 100 homes being served by one ingress/egress, we have 147 homes already. And how this violation of a city regulation slipped by years ago, and it was years ago, I'm not blaming you, we don't know, but it does endanger us. So you can imagine how concerned we are when we learned that another subdivision would add 35 something more homes to use our same ingress/egress, making us now almost twice the maximum allowed. And to add insult to injury, we now learn that there are plans for another, a sale which would lead to building more houses off Linda Lane is being considered. That's what's discussed tonight. And these houses would also need to use our same very limited exit. And we want to know, how did this disregard of a city traffic regulation get past the city council, the traffic engineer, the fire department? We've been told, don't worry, there's going to be a road built down east of Orchid Lane, but now we're told that they're going to build a house there instead. And we were told there'll be an emergency road put in, and it'll be locked, not for daily use, but it'll be opened in case of emergency. And I think that's ridiculous, because you get an emergency, a fire in the middle of the night, which is not uncommon. Who's going to open the gate? If he doesn't, who's responsible? He may be, whoever that is, has his own family to worry about. Responsibility is the operative word, and I'm asking you, members of our city council, to consider this as you make decisions about the safety of our community. You're each good people, or you wouldn't be working on our behalf, and we thank you for that. I don't believe you deliberately disregard regulations that are in place for our protection, but I do wonder if the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. So I ask you to discuss these issues openly among yourselves, carefully, and then choose not what is expedient, but what is the right thing to do.
All right, thank you. Diener.
I'm Barbara Von Diether, and I'm blind in my right eye and have very partial vision on the left. This is Terry Franklin, and she's going to assist me. Go ahead. My name is Barbara Von Diether, 5786 Center Street. The Fifth Ward of the city has not had a representation as guaranteed by the Constitution since Mary Lee Woodrow was our council member. 250 years ago, the colonists of what was to become the United States got tired of the King of England charging huge taxes on every ship of supplies sent to the New World. He spent those taxes himself, and it wasn't on the colonists. Unhappy with this arrangement, we the people fought for a voice in how our taxes were spent, at the end of which we had a constitution that promised we the people would have a representative at the table when our money was divided and spent. Merrily retired and a successor was elected. To appeal to voters, the new representative made a campaign promise published in the Register Guard on April 28, 1923. Quote, conducting outreach on city decisions to the community is the first thing I want to tackle, unquote. This was a promise to the voters of in Ward 5 that they would be included in the decision-making. After the election, it was another story. I have in my hand a 2-page single-spaced email sent to We the People on December 23rd, 2023 from our new representative. I will read just one sentence of the many. Quote, whether you agree or not, I hope you can respond that I hope you respect that I vote my conscience and not just to win the approval of people, end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, I can convey the meaning of that sentence in 4 words. Your opinion doesn't matter. That means we had a representative who only made decisions based on her own opinion and not on that of we the people. As a result, we have not had any representation since Marilee Woodrow retired. Our constitutional right to representation has been ignored, and that is why we are asking you to restore our rights. We in the 5th Ward are currently experiencing a construction of a subdivision that threatens the peaceful enjoyment of our property and our safety, and a representative made all the decisions for us. Our constitutional right to representation was ignored while this process was taking place. Tonight, here come another potential subdivision. No doubt all the decisions about it have already been made, and not by the citizens of Ward 5. We don't have any representation. Do you have any questions? I thought not.
Thank you. And it is not normal for us to have questions and go back and forth with when we're taking public hearing testimony. All right, that is the last card that I have. Neil, do you have anybody online for this item?
It does not appear we have any hands for this item.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Jeremy, why don't you come back on up? And I'm going to guess we're going to need Jeff because we're going to ask about the entrance and exit. Councilor Rodley.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming out and sharing your perspectives on this. It's always very helpful to have that. I agree with the mayor. So the concerns that were raised about the entrance and egress and the sort of safety for folks in case of emergency, I'm interested in what that actually looks like and what our plan is, and if we have one, and just I'm curious about that. Thank you.
All right, first, thank you, Councilor. Jeff Pascal, Community Development Director. So as part of when that subdivision was proposed, it came in under discretionary use, which means or discretionary decision. So they proposed, they could propose different things to meet the criteria. So one of the criteria was secondary access or emergency access. And so the folks who spoke tonight are wrong. There was discussion at one of the locations of where they would put that access. However, that property owner who developed it had that decision and that right to make that decision where the access was, and they chose to put it farther to the south. So there is emergency egress, but it is strictly only for emergency ingress and egress. And so it will be either bollarded or gated and opened up in the case of an emergency. The biggest reason for that is there is a planned intersection at Bob Straub. It's farther to the south on the next property. And so can't compel that property owner to participate in this development or when timing of when that property gets developed. And those are long-standing negotiations when Bob Straub was built. As far as Linda Lane, any developer, and the action Jeremy's bringing before you is not a development application, strictly an action for the city to declare it surplus. If whoever purchases it comes in, they'll be held to our current code standards. They'll have to provide access or transportation network as shown in our current transportation system plan.
Other questions? Counselor Stout.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciated and very intrigued about the testimony regarding the value of the wetlands, and specifically, is it possible, not just with the 11 acres, but is there possible to kind of log that as additional wetlands in excess of those 11 acres for the full quantity? And is there a monetary value associated with that? I'm not just interested in the monetary value, though. I'm also interested in saying, is there maybe a portion of Springfield that's closer in that we would want to develop that's already connected to city services that would make a little bit more sense to develop, and then moving some of the like lower grade wetlands to a higher grade wetland? Thank you.
So we kind of explored this question, and in order for the city to, in essence, we could use the wetlands for a city project. We're not set up to be a wetlands bank. So that would mean allowing people to buy in, other developers buy in, and then we take our wetlands that we own and then we keep those in a covenant or in perpetuity and improve those or preserve those. And so it would only be valuable to the city if we had another project, say a road project or sewer project, much like this one, to where we could use the remaining wetlands. So when we discussed as staff, we thought it was more useful to put the property on the market. Whoever bought that then could either use those wetlands, again, just similar to the project that is ongoing, Springfield Meadows. They did the same thing. They had wetlands that they banked on their own property to preserve, to mitigate other wetlands on the property, to increase their improvement area. And so anyway, we decided it was better to put that on the market, let the developer decide if in their properties that they own or whoever bought that property, that they could find use for those wetlands if they wanted, or if they had other wetlands, then they could mitigate those wetlands. Does that kind of answer your question?
Councilor Blackwell.
Excuse me, back to the egress and, road. When a developer need to, like you said, go through our code and transportation plan and whatnot to make sure that there is proper egress into the new development, is that correct? So that would then be placed if someone bought it and wanted to develop the land, they would have to submit all that to the city to be approved.
Yes, that is correct. And that's why, and Jeremy can speak to this, that's why you see the two lots. So the second smaller lot we acquired from the county, and that's to kind of make sure that there's enough right of way in that Linda Lane. It's a local access road right now today, but that way there was enough right of way through that property for future, egress out to Mount Vernon Road and development. And so, yes, you're correct. They would have to come in and develop and provide a transportation network that meets our current code.
All right. I think there's two potential issues here, right? One of them is the transportation system on the Linda Lane side, but the other one is to get our kind of head around the egress question. And if you could just come back to that for a second. So I think what I've heard you say is like that the emergency access is going to be for emergency vehicles, right? And everybody would potentially evacuate to the north of there is the current plan. And then they would get another intersection in. Can you help me understand when they would get the other intersection, which would be the long-term solution?
Yeah, so there is another, so we don't have a map up, but so where Jasper Meadows 3 is, there's another subdivision just to the south of there called Springfield Meadows developing. And so it's adjacent to another property. And that next property, I believe, when I measured, it's about another quarter mile to third of a mile down to where the actual intersection is, and that's on that adjacent property. And so that future intersection onto Bob Straub would be developed when that next property owner developed their property, which is some of it's residential, some of it's industrial.
And are there any talks currently, or do we have any indication of when that might be?
No indication right now.
So theoretically, at least in the medium term, right, that subdivision's gonna have to deal with the emergency access in its normal everyday north-south entrance.
Correct. And actually, sale of the Linda Lane property and future development could alleviate some of that egress because the Linda Lane property that the city owns does have access out to Mount Vernon Road. So through Linda Lane, it would require development of Linda Lane into a street of a urban level street, or at least 2/3, whatever that requirement would be through our development code. But then there is also connection up to South 57th Street shown in our transportation system plan that any future developer would have to make connection to.
Okay. And I think the question I keep having, right, is that I don't want this conversation around the second intersection to really get lost in all the moving parts that are around that south side of the city. And just recognizing that, right, like if we potentially need to think through this from an emergency management perspective of, we're saying that that egress is basically going to be to bring fire vehicles and police vehicles into the subdivision, and making sure that there's enough capacity to potentially get everybody out. And I think the third point is just to get real clear so everybody's got shared facts about there is a second intersection coming. When is that going to be, and why is that going to be, would be like really helpful, because that's a consistent theme every time the Linda Lane folks come out and chat.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And one recommendation I might have on some of the other questions we heard tonight, which is how did the subdivision get approved? I might recommend that we just send a communication packet, because there's a lot of questions built into there on how did Springfield Meadows get approved under our code? How does that occur? And I know in some of the emails that I've been a part of going way back, there's been a lot of discussion, but I think for the full council to kind of understand how those are approved, it might be just easy for us to have, go back with the current planning manager and prepare a council packet memo that kind of describes all of those decisions and how those were made.
I vaguely remember a pretty good explanation the last time this came up. So I'm not, I'm in favor of you sending it in. I'm not sure how much more work you would have to do on it.
I think just kind of making it so it's a memo, sending it to so that you have everybody kind of has that same information.
That's Rodley. Did I see Steve? That's Well, she happens to sit right at my.
Okay, I'm going to echo what all the other councilors are saying. There's a large block of land. We need room to develop in the city for housing, but this is large enough. It's got to have 2 entrances, and that's essential. No matter what we do, that's got to be part of the package.
Councilor Rodley.
Thank you. And I just want to just take a minute to acknowledge, because this is challenging and it's hard. And we don't have a lot of developable land in Springfield. And we are also wanting to make sure that everyone who wants to live here has housing. And we need to develop the infrastructure in order to support that. That doesn't mean that it necessarily feels great. So I just want to acknowledge that, because I know that when neighborhoods change, or when we have conversations about how to best use what little land we have in order to develop the city, it does we have different opinions about it. And one of the other things that came up, which isn't really related to this, is a few of you have talked about not having a Ward 5 city councilor. And I would like to encourage you, if you have the time and capacity or know someone who does, to apply for that position, because we would love to have great representation in Ward 5 to help with the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rodley. And I would also echo the sentiment about we do have a Ward 5 opening right now. And for residents in that area, everybody that is on city council appeared on one of your ballots, right? So one of the things that we're responsible for is to really still care for you guys as citizens in this community. The last question that I had, and I don't know if I think Renee brought up this 2022 study about wetlands. Could you help give a little bit more context to that? All right, thank you. Is this ringing a bell?
I think it might be the report in there that we had to have done as far as establishing the conservation easement. So I think that was the size of the size. So the wetlands that we're mitigating as part of the sewer project, and then how much acreage do you have to establish and preserve in order to mitigate those? And I believe it's about 10 times. Yeah, 10 to 1. So it was like 0.7 acres and we had to preserve 7. The 11 acres actually encompasses the setback.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Renee. All right, thank you. But please stop, yelling at the meeting. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you are. Do you need it?
All right, I move to adopt a resolution declaring certain real property owned by the city of Springfield surplus 18-02-04-00-01511 and 18-02-04-42-01300 and directing the city manager to list, negotiate, and accept the strongest offer.
Second.
Could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber, Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell,
Yes.
and Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 4 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the audience.
I have one card. It is Bella Yeager. And Bella, I know you brought us a report. They're going to make copies for the rest of the council, but I did bring a copy up here. Bella, your microphone's not on. Yeah, you should have a button right in front of you. It's going to turn green when you are. Nope, keep pushing it. There you go.
Got it. Sorry. Thank you. Council members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bella Yeager. I am a young professional in Springfield, a student of anthropology at Oregon State University, and secretary of the board of the Friends of the Springfield Public Library. I strongly believe that a well-educated population is essential to a functioning civilization. Libraries are spaces where people can explore identity, access information without social or economic barriers, and where power is decentralized. Libraries support social mobilization by providing communities with educational programs for children and adults and granting people access to technology. During periods of social and political turmoil, libraries often function as spaces that facilitate democratic dialogue. Authoritarian governments often defund libraries because of their inherent ability to present the public with narratives that challenge the regime's ideals. Leadership in the United States has proposed eliminating the federal agency that supports libraries. Loudly, passionately, and emphatically supporting library systems is crucial if we want to preserve our democracy. Here in Springfield, we cannot let budget shortfalls keep us from uplifting our community and protecting our democracy. Cutting $500,000 from our library budget would silence opportunity for the people who rely on library resources the most. We are aware that Springfield faces a projected $4.5 million shortfall by 2027. I have prepared an alternative budget recommendation that will protect our library while addressing the fiscal challenge head-on. I'll briefly summarize my recommendations. We should expand and prioritize the strategic sale and development of city-owned properties. Near-term gains here could generate $500,000 to $1 million. With targeted investment, Glenwood could add $250,000 a year in recurring revenue within just a few years. We need to reform police overtime. Last year, police overtime cost Springfield $1.7 million, nearly 4 times the budgeted amount. Through scheduling reforms and technology, we can achieve a 40 to 50% reduction in excess overtime and save nearly $500,000 a year, enough to cover the library share without cutting services. Similarly, the city should delay non-urgent equipment upgrades and conduct an audit of surplus police vehicles and hardware, reassigning sale proceeds to offset operating shortfalls. We can adjust staffing in the city manager's office to peer city benchmarks. Aligning with other cities of similar size could save nearly $300,000. As the task force recommended, we should introduce a tax on short-term rentals. With roughly 400 active rentals here in Springfield, I calculated this would generate close to $862,000 annually. I ask the council to consider the choices before us. We can accept easy cuts, or we can commit to smarter, fairer solutions that protect what makes our city strong. Libraries provide the education, access, and democratic foundation that allow our community to thrive. I urge you to reject the proposed library cuts and instead embrace a strategy that addresses our fiscal challenges without sacrificing the heart of Springfield. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards. Neil, do you?
No hands for this item.
All right. Next item, please.
Next item is any business from the city council.
Is there any business from the council? Next item, please.
Next item under business from the city manager, item number 1 is a potential downtown project. Alley Camp is here for this item, and there is a motion for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight in your packet, up for action from you all is a next step in a potential downtown project with developer Obi Companies. The memorandum of understanding, the draft version, is included in your packet today. As a reminder, the city has completed an exclusive negotiating agreement timeframe with developer already. This MOU is the next step of the development process for a potential future project downtown. An MOU, a memorandum of understanding, permits the council time to continue to discuss needs from the developer and intents of the projects. Some considerations for the council with this MOU are as follows. Timing, this is a 180-day timeframe, together 6 months. Should the council proceed, that puts us at approximately mid to late March for both parties to deliver required elements of the MOU. It's a very quick timeframe. Another consideration is prevailing wage. We talk a lot about prevailing wage with large development projects. A reminder, that is the dedication of funds of a public agency over $750,000. The impact of triggering prevailing wage applies to both parties, and it includes additional reporting and requirements for both sides. Another consideration for the council with this MOU is coordination with CEDA. You will see in the MOU that there are elements that involved the Springfield Economic Development Agency, CEDA. Staff are looking to the most effective way to manage decisions across 2 different policymaking bodies. And finally, this MOU, if moved forward tonight, will lead to a future binding agreement. And it provides us the time for more discussion of this project and fact-finding. Any decisions will be made at the time of future binding agreement, not during this MOU period. The binding agreement is the step after the MOU, and the proposed draft MOU identifies a good faith effort to build this agreement during the 180 days with the development team. Just a quick note that I spoke with members of the development team over the last couple of days. Brian Obi, the president, Casey Barrett, the executive vice president, and Seth Sherry, their director of development. They remain excited about the prospect of investing in downtown Springfield. Tonight I'm requesting action from the council to approve or not approve the city manager to negotiate and enter into the MOU in substantially the form included in your packet.
All right, thank you, Ally. Are there questions? Councilor Mo.
I'm excited that Obi is interested in downtown Springfield. It's really prime property. We all know that. but things like this sort of tie things up. So somebody else might be interested. They may put it off. So I hope we do this. I hope it goes through. I encourage OB to develop in Springfield.
Anybody else? All right, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move to approve the city manager to negotiate and enter into the memorandum of understanding and substantially, I don't know what this is. I'm.
We are missing a complete motion, it looks like.
Yep, I just, to help me, Mary Bridget, but I'll make it up. I move to approve the city manager to negotiate to enter into the memorandum of understanding in the potential downtown project discussed.
In substantially the form in the packet.
It's substantially the form in the packet.
Second.
All right, Neil, could you call the vote?
Yes, Counselor Weber, Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell,
Yes.
Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 4 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
Before I see if City Manager Newton has an item, I just wanted to give the council an update. The council has asked that we continue working with SUB on emergency management response. This morning, we did a pretty extensive tabletop at the EOC with about 50 city and SUB staffers through a real-world challenge in Springfield that Ken Vogany, our emergency manager, and Sajeev King from SUB put together. It was a relatively intense 3 hours. I just want to thank SUB. I know Jeff is here. They did some incredible work, extremely professional, and our folks, of course, were professional as well. So we learned a lot today, and I just wanted to let the council know we're continuing to work on that emergency management relationship. With that, I'll see if City Manager Newton has any items.
No further items, thank you.
Any items from the city attorney?
No further business. Thank you.
All right. Adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.